Today we are going to look at the story of Moses, the Ten Commandments, and the golden calf. So, the story goes that Moses goes up the mountain to receive the law from God. He's gone for 40 days and 40 nights. And when the people see that he has been delayed, they gather together and come to Aaron and say, "Come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this Moses, the man who has brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." So Moses is only 40 days absent, and already the people have dissolved. Already they are reverting, sliding back into the religious forms of Egypt. Already they are demanding something visible, something tangible, and something they can see and touch and carry before them. Aaron unforgivably, but also quite inevitably, complies. He takes their gold earrings, melts them, and casts them into the shape of a calf. The people declare, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." Moses comes down the mountain carrying the tablets of the law, the most sacred object the Torah will ever describe, and hears the noise of singing in the camp. He sees the calf and the dancing, and he hurls the tablets, hurls them from his hands and breaks them at the foot of the mountain. He burns the calf, he grinds it into powder, he scatters it on the water, he makes the people drink it. It is one of the most violent scenes in the Torah. 3,000 people are killed that day by the swords of the Levites who rallied to Moses. Today, we read this with Sigmund Freud, who had, as we'll see, very specific ideas about what happens to a group when its leader disappears and what rushes in to fill the terrifying void. Freud wrote about groups and crowds in a remarkable late work called Group Psychology and the Analysis of the Ego, published in 1921. Drawing on earlier social psychology of Gustav Le Bon, Freud built an analysis of what happens to individuals when they become part of a group, and what happens to that group when its central figure is lost. His central argument is this: a group is held together psychologically by the love its members feel for the leader. This love, Freud uses the word quite seriously, is a kind of libidinal attachment, an investment of emotional energy in a figure who comes to represent for the group's members something enormously important, the ego ideal, the image of what the group aspires to be, the source of authority and meaning that each individual has partly surrendered their independent judgment to. While the leader is present, this investment holds the group together. People who might otherwise compete, quarrel, and fragment are unified by their shared attachment to the central figure. The group has identity, cohesion, and direction. And then the leader goes away, or dies, or is absent. And Freud says the group panics because the loss of the leader is experienced not as an external event, but as an internal catastrophe. The ego ideal, the source of meaning and structure, has been removed, and into the resulting void rushes everything that was held in check by the leader's presence: anxiety, regression, the appetite for something concrete and visible and immediately soothing. This is almost exactly what happens at the foot of Sinai. Moses has gone for 40 days. 40 days is not a very long time, but to a people who have been slaves for generations, who have no experience of self-governance, who have structured their entire sense of reality around the presence of the man who brought them out of Egypt, 40 days is an eternity. They do not know what has become of him. That sentence is psychologically precise. It is not that they know Moses has abandoned them and are angry. It is that they genuinely do not know. He has gone into the cloud on the mountain, and the cloud has been there for 40 days, and they cannot see through it, and they have no information. The uncertainty is unbearable. And their response is not anger exactly, it is regression. They turn to Aaron, Moses' brother, the second figure, the one who is available, and they ask for gods. not a god in the abstract, gods. The plural is significant. They are reaching back towards the forms of Egypt, the familiar pantheon, the divine figures that were visible and multiple and comprehensible. They are reaching for what they know. Freud would say this is the psychology of regression under stress. When the structure that has been providing meaning collapses, the psyche reaches for an earlier structure, one that felt safer, even if that safety was the safety of slavery, because at least in slavery the shape of reality was known. There is a bitter irony here that Freud would notice. The people ask Aaron to make them gods who will go before them in place of Moses. They substitute a calf, an object, something cast from their own jewelry, something they made with their own hands, for the living relationship with a God who spoke directly, who acted in history, who brought them out of Egypt through 10 plagues and a parted sea. They trade the invisible for the visible. They trade the demanding for the comfortable. They trade the God who requires something of them for a God they can carry. Freud observed in The Future of an Illusion that religion very often functions as a protection against the anxiety of helplessness, a way of projecting onto a divine figure the parental care and authority that the individual can no longer generate for themselves. The golden calf is a perfect example of this in its most regressed form, an object whose power comes entirely from the people's projection onto it, whose authority is derived solely from their needs to have something authoritative to look at. Moses' rage when he comes down the mountain is, in Freud's framework, not simply a moral response to violation. It is the response of a leader who has returned to find his group in full regression, who has found that everything he worked for, the whole project of transforming slaves into a free people capable of relationship with a demanding and invisible God, has come apart in 40 days. The breaking of the tablets is interesting psychologically. Moses carries down something sacred, the written law, the very words of God engraved in stone, and he smashes them at the foot of the mountain when he sees the calf. The tablets are destroyed. Later, God will give a second set, but the first set, the ones written, the Torah says, by the finger of God himself, are broken. There is a tradition in later Jewish thought that the fragments of the first tablets were kept and carried alongside the second set in the ark. Broken things, holy things. The rabbis taught the broken tablets were kept because even shattered sacred things are still sacred. Freud might read the first tablets as the ideal, the relationship between God and people as it was originally conceived, whole, direct, and unmediated. And the second tablets as the revised contract, the one made after the failure had been acknowledged, the one that takes into account what the people actually are rather than what they might have been, a hard-won covenant, one that carries within it the knowledge of how quickly it can be broken. There was one more moment in the Golden Calf episode that I find deeply important and which connects to Freud's whole account of religion. After the slaughter of the 3,000, Moses goes back up the mountain and says to God, "These people have sinned a great sin. They have made for themselves gods of gold. But now, if you will, forgive their sin. But if not, please blot me out of your book that you have written." Blot me out. Moses offers himself in place of the people. He is willing to be erased from the divine record, to be unmade as far as God is concerned, if it means the people can survive. God says, "Whoever has sinned against me, I will blot out of my book. But go now and lead the people where I have told you. My angel will go before you." There is grief in this reply. There is a distance in it that was not there before. Something has changed between God and Israel at the foot of Sinai. And Moses, who offered everything, receives not the answer he asked, but for a continuation of the task. Freud would see this as the realistic note that all genuine religious life must eventually strike. The God of easy comfort, the golden calf, the visible, the immediate soothing, is not available. What is available is harder and more demanding. A God who is not manufactured by human needs, who cannot be controlled or carried or ground up and dissolved into water. What goes before you and what keeps you going even after you have failed.